but we need to explain that not all intellectual disability is Down syndrome.
Wow.
And that is something that we need to educate the public.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to Special Moms Africa, the podcast. Real talk on special needs parenting. I'm figuring you kind of know my voice already, but if you don't, my name is Tonye Falugi Ekezie. Yes, you hear that person? That's that very troublemaker with the beautiful smile, Bukola Ayinde. And you know, she abandoned me. I'm here in the studio by myself, or she's joining by Zoom. But I couldn't do this without her. We thank God. It's not by choice. So I'm just very privileged to also have her as my co-host today. Now, what's our topic? Well, we are going to take another look at Down syndrome, but specifically looking at the aspect of intellectual disability. So let's do a real quick refresher of what Down syndrome is. And I'll take the definition from my book, Ugo and Simpson, What is Down Syndrome? The children's book. So Down syndrome is also called trisomy 21. It is a condition where a baby is born with an extra chromosome, of an extra copy of chromosome 21. Down syndrome can affect how a child develops, and one of the most probably visible characteristics is the upward slanted eyes. So that's like a real tiny definition. Now, childrenshospital.org says, most children with Down syndrome have some level of intellectual disability, usually in the mild to moderate range. People with mild intellectual disability are usually able to learn how to do everyday things like read, hold a job, and take public transportation on their own. People with moderate intellectual disability usually need more support. Thanks to special education and community programs, people with Down syndrome can graduate from high school, attend college, and work in their communities. To help children with Down syndrome reach their highest potential, parents can seek out developmental and special education services for children with Down syndrome, starting at birth with early intervention. With all that said, we cannot wait to meet our trailblazing guest right after this break. I'm Tonye Falugi Ekezie. If you're enjoying this episode of Special Moms Africa, brought to you by Simone's Oasis and Africa Business Radio, then why not listen to our other podcast, Represented, Storybooks and More for African Kids. Now, don't forget to subscribe, put on your notifications, and share with loads of people out there. Thanks for listening. Welcome back. And the person we are meeting today is Mrs. Rose Mordi. So before we actually meet her, let me tell you a little bit about her. She's a British-trained business administrator, founder and president of the Down Syndrome Foundation of Nigeria, an NGO that caters for children and adults with Down syndrome in Nigeria and other West African countries. The foundation was established primarily to care for children with Down syndrome in 4 core areas: educational, vocational, medical, and social integration. The foundation has recorded great achievements under her leadership, sponsoring many children overseas for medical procedures, organized seminars locally and internationally, participated in Special Olympics, international games, educational and vocational training for people with Down syndrome, awareness creation and advocacy. She co-initiated the Save a Life project. That's SALP, which is a charity associated with the Down Syndrome Foundation. A spokesperson and advocate for people with intellectual disability, chairperson of Africa Down Syndrome Network, and a trustee in various charities and clubs. Man, she is a heavyweight. Mrs. Mordi has received several awards locally and internationally in recognition of her contribution to the less privileged in the society. She is totally, utterly committed to changing the negative societal mindset in African society towards people with disability, and relentless in her effort to give the less privileged a chance to contribute effectively to and be appreciated by the society. We are so privileged to have you here. Welcome, Mrs. Mordi.
It's a pleasure being here today.
Welcome, ma'am.
Thank you, my dear.
So,
it's always a pleasure.
It really is a pleasure always to see you. Now, from your experience, Mrs. Mordi, how does the intellectual disability usually present with Down syndrome? Could you give us some examples? That's
an open-ended question that I find a little bit difficult to explain. You've actually gone into explaining what Down syndrome is, and Down syndrome is a form of intellectual disability. And it presents in so many ways. But I would be more specific, talking from the angle of Down syndrome. As you well know, intellectual disability is wide-ranged. We have people with different other spectrum like autism, cerebral palsy, and the rest of it. And they present in different ways. But with people with Down syndrome, their own is both physical and intellectual, because you would know them from their features and the way they move and so on. And then academically also, they are below average. And that's, in our society, I believe every disability, intellectual disability, they zero it down to Down syndrome, which is actually not strictly correct.
So you just hit on something. So you're saying that a lot of times people just assume that someone who has, an intellectual disability has Down syndrome, even though they may not have Down syndrome.
Exactly, absolutely.
Wow.
In our society, yes.
Okay, that's interesting.
Because over the years, I have met numerous families that come with various forms of disabilities which they call Down syndrome, and they bring to us, and I have to educate them and let them know, even though we still give them help. But we need to explain that not all intellectual disability is Down syndrome.
Wow.
And that is something that we need to educate the public. Because I think since Down syndrome had been projected over the years, most parents think that every intellectual disability is Down syndrome.
Wow. Okay, I did not know that. So that's really quite an interesting observation. So
yeah, I think what happened is for parents is just what they've heard, because I also am aware that anyone that has a mobility disorder, parents feel, the child has cerebral palsy.
Right.
Do you understand?
Because they're the most well-known, maybe they're most obvious.
Exactly. So I think it's just what parents are exposed to. If they are exposed to this, so they think all disability is this. So, yeah.
Absolutely. You've just hit the nail on the head. So like that, Bukola, you've just said it. Because as far as parents are concerned, in Nigeria in particular, most parents, every intellectual disability is Down syndrome. And this is something I think we need to educate the public on it.
So people need to understand the diagnosis of their child.
Absolutely.
In order to get the accurate diagnosis to be able to address the needs of their child. Can you give us like an example, because yes, the intellectual disabilities can be wide ranging, but if you can pick one example and just explain in context, an intellectual disability that you've come across.
Okay, let me take the other very common one, that's autism. The spectrum is quite wide ranged, even in autism. But for those of them who have severe autism, most parents, they think that they cannot be trained. There are a lot of things that need to be addressed, a lot of issues that need to be explained to parents because they have specific needs. Mm-hmm. Each disability has specific way of handling. Even within the intellectual disability sector, autism, a lot of children who have autism, most of them are nonverbal. Mm-hmm. And they have specific way of behavior, and there are things that you need to look out for to be able to understand. But I always advocate for specialist intervention.
Yes.
You need to have a specialist who should be able to address it and advise, not for you to go by what you see or what people tell you.
Yes.
Let me now come back to Down syndrome. When we started about 21 years ago in Nigeria, we really had a lot of challenges to face to explain to parents the specific needs of our young ones with Down syndrome. Some of them would think, it's a spiritual attack, there's something wrong somewhere, or somebody did something to me from the village, and so on, all sorts of things. Where there's need for parents and the society to know about those things that we should do or look out for. And that is what I always tell people. Number one, early medical intervention is very vital. You need a specialist. And with intellectual disability, they need a multidisciplinary team of specialists, both in the medical, social, educational sector, to be able to diagnose properly and then put in place those things that need to be done for the child to thrive and be able to navigate their way through life. And that's my advice. Simply get expert advice.
So you actually have answered my next question already because you are just such a professional, Mrs. Mordi. But, looking at that, just to reiterate some of those points, it's really important to get the diagnosis for your child. Don't guess. It's really important that you do that sooner than later so that you can start the intervention as soon as possible. As Mrs. Mordi said, early intervention is crucial, vital to the success of the child in later years. And it really does make a difference. But I want you to state something, Mrs. Mordi. Is there a cure for Down syndrome?
That's a question I have been asked 1,000,001 times.
I figured.
And I'm sure you have an answer to it like I do. Down syndrome is not a disease. Mm-hmm. It's not an illness. Mm-hmm. It is a condition.
Are you sure, Mother? I can't take supplements for it? Please tell our listeners.
Bukola started.
Are you sure I can't go and do stem cell and do one surgery for it?
Don't let anybody deceive you, Bukola, for goodness sake. Number one, Down syndrome is not an illness. It's not a disease. It is a condition. Let me explain. Down syndrome is a condition that a child who is going to be born with that condition is born with an extra material in the cell. They have 47 chromosomes as against 46 the rest of us have. And mind you, we have trillions of cells in our body. And there is no way, as far as I know, up till now, that the medical experts have told me they'll be able to remove that extra chromosome from all those trillions of cells. Mm-hmm. So what I'm saying is that Down syndrome is not an illness. It is a condition, but they are predisposed to some medical conditions that needs to be addressed, just like every other person. But it's more prevalent among children or people with Down syndrome. And that's where we need to really educate people about. Not that you can cure Down syndrome, since Down syndrome is not a disease, but the fact that you need to have early medical intervention because they are predisposed to a lot of medical issues due to that extra chromosome they have.
See, an expert in this field, and that's why we have her on today. So, leading from there, I want to know the kind of work you do at Down Syndrome Foundation Nigeria, including some of the interventions you have in-house that you do to address intellectual disability. What does a day in the life of DSFN, what is it like?
Wow, it's very interesting. A day in the life of us there at the foundation. We wake up and hit the ground running every day. Incidentally, let me explain what we do, which we started about, I think 15 years ago, even though we've been running it for the last 21 years in Nigeria. We started first as a support group. I started it in my sitting room. I got a few of the parents then who were bold enough to come out to join me. And then I started educating them and telling them those things.
I'm just going to interrupt you. So why did you do that?
Because I am involved. Like Ojugu said, because I'm involved. I'm a parent. My last child, who is going to turn 35 in a few months, was born with a condition called Down syndrome. And when we returned back, I had her in Nigeria. Mm-hmm. And I realized that when I had her, I realized that there was little or nothing known about Down syndrome in Nigeria. As a matter of fact, let me just give you a little brief background of my little story about her birth.
Please.
My two other older children, I had them in the UK. I remember when I was expecting my first child, we had the antenatal clinic that we were going to. And I remember that one of the antenatal classes addressed the issue of Down syndrome. And that was the first time I ever saw the picture of a child with Down syndrome. And it was explained in detail because that's what is usually done, to let the parents know so that at least it won't come as a shock if your child is born with that condition. You should know. Mm-hmm. I didn't know that 10 years down the line, I would come to have a child with Down syndrome. And by that time, we had returned back to Nigeria. And I had her in one of the best teaching hospitals in the country. And I remember towards my, I think, third trimester that I started having a lot of issues. She felt very heavy on me, and I was wondering, and I was having all sorts of issues, swollen legs, and one illness or the other. I went to my pediatrician. They said I didn't have anything to worry, and so on. But I think maybe it's a mother's instinct, which I think most of us mothers do have.
Yes.
And I kept worrying. I said, there's something not quite right about this baby I'm carrying. The doctor told me, maybe a boy. I said, no, I already have a boy. So there must be something. They kept assuring me there was nothing wrong. And then I needed to have an elective CS. And they gave the date. I went in, and then when I had her, they took her because she was pregnant. They took her to the nursery. I didn't even see her.
Wow.
And then I told my husband, I said, I'd like you to go and have a look at that baby and so on. They took him there. He just stood by the window and came by. So the baby's pretty. He was waving to me. I just said to myself, a day-old child waving to you. Anyway, and I kept wanting to see the baby. After I had insisted, on the fourth day, I was having my siesta, and then something suddenly woke me up, and I looked and I saw a cut by my side, and I excitedly got up, took a look, and the face just hit me straight.
Wow. And
immediately my heart sank. I said, no, it can't be, because the picture I saw 10 years earlier just came back. Wow. Because she was a classic case of Down syndrome. I mean, she is even now.
She was so obviously.
Very obvious,
wow.
Everything. She has all the stigmata. So I bent down and carried the baby. And I started looking at all these features, all the physical stigmata that I was told then, and they were all there complete.
And nobody told you?
Nobody told me. Nobody.
They must have known.
I called the nurse who was there at the nurse's bay. And she came. I told her, I said, take a look at this baby. Is there something different about her? She looked at her. I said, oh, she's very pretty. She has an angelic face. I said, no, but look at her again. She said, no. Oh, there's nothing wrong with her. I said, I think there is. I think this child has Down syndrome. Then I started showing her all the features I have seen, everything. In fact, everything was there. The facial feature, the low set ears, the nasal bridge, and she had very low muscle tone, very, very low muscle tone. Her neck was not holding at all. And so when I looked at her palm, I looked at her toes, I looked at everything, they were all there. I pointed it out to her. She looked at me, looked at the baby, looked at me again, and then asked me, are you a doctor? I said, no, I'm not. I'm a mother. She just smiled. She didn't say yes, she didn't say no. And it was then I realized that she didn't even know anything about it.
Oh, my goodness.
I then went into panic and I started screaming. I was crying and so on. They had to send for the pediatrician and my gynae, because they were all there when, during the CS. And they came and screened me off and so on. I was screaming. Wow. In fact, I think I really caused a lot of furore there. Anyway, so in all fairness, the pediatrician had indicated in the case note, she put DS and put a question mark, but she didn't tell anybody.
Wow.
And she said that I was the first parent to notice that she had delivered a lot of them, that because nobody asked any question, she didn't say anything. So I told her, I said it was wrong, that somebody should have done something, at least to allay the fears of the parents, instead of them going out there and running from pillar to post and going to all sorts of places and so on. It was there and then I made up my mind. I said, I wouldn't want any other parent to go through what I went through, or those I can help, I will. That
That's
it actually
amazing.
Took me more than 14 years after her death before I took up, because my other children needed to grow up, go to school.
Yes.
And then when they had grown up and left home, I told my husband, I said, it's now time for us to do it. And that's how Down Syndrome Foundation Nigeria started.
Wow.
Like I said, we started as
story.
a support group in my sitting room. When I had her, I had to return back to the UK to seek help because I needed to know if she had any
medical
congenital heart
issues
defect or any other thing. But after we found out she didn't have any of those, and then I was directed to join the Down Syndrome of the UK. I did, and they gave me a lot of support resource materials that helped me. And then they advised me. They were the ones who advised me I should start one, that we don't have any in the West African countries, that I needed to start. So that's how it started.
I think that is a great foundation story. Like, it's absolutely incredible. And
so I was engrossed in
I'm telling you, and time is going, and I'm
wow.
like, oh, this is what our listeners really need to hear and understand. What can happen, what does happen, the process, the grief, the fury, the frustration, everything. And yet you found this, yes, and you found the strength to move forward and realize that through your own journey, you could help, and you can help and continue to help other people. So, Mrs. Mordi, we have to move along because we are running out of time. I still want to kind of quickly, in like 1 minute, can you just give us a day in life of the activities at the foundation?
Yeah, okay. We run 4 basic programs in the foundation. The early medical intervention, because we have a program of medical checks that we give to all parents to carry out on a regular basis. And then we take the children from the age of 5. They live in there. But from birth, we take them on and advise the parents and support the parents to take care of them properly so that they could have that basic intervention that they need. And they have the love and the acceptance from the family. And then we train them on academics, the younger ones, how to read and write. And then as they grow older, we introduce vocational skills acquisition and social integration, because that's very vital, since a lot of them are not usually accepted. And because of the misconception and the ignorance of people. And then presently we are carrying out advocacy, very aggressive advocacy. And now we are concentrating on full employment for the older ones. We are training employers and the larger society to know about them so that they could be fully accepted.
And just included. To chip in, your daughter is your PA, right-hand person, she is manager extraordinaire. So people shouldn't just think that it's just you running the foundation, that your daughter also runs it alongside with you. And, you've given her that space to be empowered, to be independent, and to grow, and bringing the importance of that into the wider public, and training corporate bodies, government bodies to be open to employing people with Down syndrome and special needs is huge. It needs to happen. People need to understand that people with Down syndrome, they want to work. They want responsibility. They want to be included. And I just think that is absolutely wonderful. And we've got to move on. So this is the point in the show, Mrs. Mordi, where we're going to put you on the spot. We do something called the honest truth, and we give you 1 minute to share with us something about this journey that you've thought but never said out loud. Not to put you on the spot, but I'm putting you on the spot.
My daughter, my last child, with the one with the Down syndrome, is ready to settle down and get married. And she talks about it every day. And quite frankly, I start worrying. When I'm gone, what happens? Even though her siblings are there, I need her to settle down.
Yes.
And that's one thing that had been my source of concern. And not that I really worry, because I know whether she marries or not, she's capable of taking care of herself and so on. But everybody thrives on love, and she needs someone who would be her life partner.
Yes,
and that's what she talks about every day. And that's what concerns me.
Well, I hope
and it's the first time I've said about it.
Oh, I'm so happy you shared with us. And my daughter is 6. I think about it all the time. So it's because we want love for them. We want them to experience companionship.
They have so much love in them.
So much.
They exude love. Yeah.
Oh, thank you so much for sharing that with us.
Thank you.
We have come to the end. So
thank you, Bukola,
I'd love to continue talking with you, because you have so much knowledge, and perhaps maybe we can get you back on our next season to dive more into your story. But I'd like to thank you, and if you can share with our listeners where they can find the Down Syndrome Foundation Nigeria on social media. Do you have the social media handle? Can you share it with us here?
Yes. We are on Facebook. We are on Instagram. I think we are also on LinkedIn. Oh dear, I'm not the one handling the social media. If you ask me now, and I might not be able to give you.
Okay, I'm going to cheat.
If you just Google the name, you would get us.
There on Instagram. I'm going to cheat. Down Syndrome Foundation NG.
We are on Facebook. We have a website, and it's www.downsyndrome-ng.org. That's the one I can give you immediately.
Wonderful.
The other one, I think, Facebook or Down Syndrome
Foundation Nigeria. Yes.
Yes, Down Syndrome Foundation Nigeria.
Mm-hmm. So thank you once again.
I want to say something, and
sure, go ahead.
To go in and say, I don't know if you are aware, these 2 poems that I make it like my creed. That's Welcome to Holland, and by Emily Kingsley. And then the other one that is by an unknown poet that is we call My Face Might Be Different.
Oh,
and this is something I tell parents, you need to be proud of your child. Just Google that Welcome to Holland.
Welcome
it's
to
very
Holland.
Inspirational. And it would uplift the spirit of a lot of parents out there and let them know that they should value these children. They shouldn't think that they are a burden or a responsibility. They are a blessing to the family. And that's what I want people out there to know.
Wonderful.
So they should not feel sorry for us. We don't need pity. And our children don't need people to patronize them. They want them to be accepted because they are special. They have so much love. And I think they came here to teach us one or two things about God's love.
They really did. Thank you so much, Mrs. Mordi, for sharing. I'd like to thank my co-host, Bukola Ayinde.
Thank
you. You can't see her beautiful smile. You can't see her beautiful smile, but I can see it.
So I hope we'll meet again physically sometime.
Yes, I hope so too.
All right, dear.
And I have been your host, Tonye Faluki, Ekezie, and you can Ekezie, and you can find us on social media with the handle at Special Moms Africa. This has, of course, been Special Moms Africa, the podcast Real Talk on special needs parenting. Till the next time, bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye. For sponsorship inquiries, you can DM us at Simone's Oasis on social media or send an email to hello@simones-oasis.com.